The dusty streets of Dodge City, Kansas had seen their share of outcasts, but none quite like Eleanor Hartley, who stood at the edge of the saloon in the summer of 1878, watching men spit at the ground when they heard her name. Eleanor had arrived in Dodge City 3 weeks prior, hoping that the bustling cattle town would offer her anonymity, but the Hartley name traveled faster than any stagecoach. Her father, Marcus Hartley, had been a banker in St. Louis who had embezzled thousands from honest working families before disappearing into the night, leaving Eleanor and her mother to face the consequences. Her mother had died of shame and consumption within 6 months, and Eleanor had been running ever since. She was 22 years old, slim and dark-haired with green eyes that held both defiance and sorrow. She had tried to find work as a seamstress, a cook, a laundress, anything respectable, but the moment anyone learned her surname, doors slammed shut faster than she could blink. She stood outside the mercantile now, clutching the few coins she had left, watching through the window as Mrs. Patterson, the shop owner's wife, pointed at her and whispered urgently to her husband. Eleanor's stomach twisted. She had hoped to buy fabric to make a dress she could sell, but she could already see the refusal forming on their faces. She turned away before they could come outside to tell her to leave, her throat tight with unshed tears. That was when she nearly collided with him. He was tall, solidly built with broad shoulders that spoke of hard work under the prairie sun. His hat was dusty from the trail, and his blue eyes were the color of the summer sky. He caught her elbow to steady her, and she noticed his hands were calloused but gentle. "Pardon me, miss," he said, his voice a low drawl that held the warmth of Texas. "Did not see you there." Eleanor pulled back immediately, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "The fault was mine," she said quietly, keeping her gaze down. She had learned not to engage with people more than necessary. The less they knew about her, the better, but the cowboy did not move on. He studied her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable, not because it was predatory, but because it was curious. Kind, even. "You look like you could use a decent meal," he observed. "The restaurant across the street serves a fair steak." Eleanor's pride flared. "I'm not a charity case," she said, lifting her chin even as her stomach growled traitorously. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Did not say you were. Just making an observation. Name's Wyatt Carson, by the way. I run cattle between here and Texas, though I'm thinking of settling down, buying some land hereabouts." She should have walked away. She should have thanked him politely and disappeared down the nearest alley. But there was something in his open expression, something honest and true that made her hesitate. Besides, she was so tired of being alone. "Eleanor," she said, deliberately leaving off her surname, "and I suppose I could eat something if you're offering." They crossed the dusty street together, dodging a wagon loaded with supplies. The restaurant was small but clean, and the smell of cooking meat made Eleanor's mouth water. Wyatt held the door for her, something no man had done in months. The few patrons glanced up briefly before returning to their meals, and Eleanor felt herself relax slightly. No one here knew her yet. Wyatt ordered for both of them. Steaks with potatoes and beans and strong coffee that came in thick ceramic mugs. Eleanor tried not to seem too eager as the food arrived, but she was hungrier than she wanted to admit. She had been living on bread crusts and whatever vegetables she could afford for days. "So what brings you to Dodge?" Wyatt asked, cutting into his steak. His manners were better than she expected from a cowboy, though there was nothing refined about him. He was simply a man comfortable in his own skin. Eleanor chose her words carefully, looking for work same as anyone else. Finding any luck, she hesitated, then shook her head. "Not much." "People here are particular about who they hire." Wyatt nodded slowly, studying her again with those steady blue eyes. "That's the truth. Dodge has gotten right civilized these past few years, law and order and all that, not like the old days from what I hear." He paused, then added, "Though I figure everyone deserves a fair shake, regardless of where they come from." There was something in the way he said it that made Eleanor wonder if he suspected she was running from something. but his expression remained open, non-judgmental. She found herself wanting to trust him, which terrified her. Trust had only brought her pain. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. The food was better than anything Eleanor had tasted in weeks, and she had to force herself to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity. Wyatt seemed content to let her eat without pressing for conversation, which she appreciated. Too many men felt the need to fill every silence with words. "What kind of work are you looking for?" Wyatt finally asked as he pushed his empty plate aside. "Anything respectable," Eleanor said. "I can sew, cook, keep books. I can read and write and cipher. I helped my mother run a boarding house for a time." That much was true, though she left out that it had been after her father fled and they lost everything. Wyatt nodded thoughtfully. "I might know of something. There's a ranch about 10 miles outside of town, the Double Bar M, owned by Michael and Martha Morrison. Good people. They have been looking for help in the house since their daughter got married and moved to Denver. Martha's getting on in years and the work's too much for her alone." He met Eleanor's eyes directly. "I could ride out there with you tomorrow, introduce you properly. They trust my word." Eleanor's heart leaped at the possibility, but caution held her back. "Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me." "True enough," Wyatt admitted. "But I've got fair instincts about people, and my gut tells me you are good folk who have fallen on hard times. Am I wrong?" Eleanor looked down at her hands, at the worn fabric of her dress. "I have had some difficulties," she said quietly, "but I'm honest and I work hard. I won't steal or cause trouble." "Did not figure you would," Wyatt said easily. "So what do you say? Want me to make the introduction?" She should have been more cautious. She should have asked more questions, found out more about this stranger who was being so kind for no apparent reason. But desperation and loneliness made her bold. "Yes," Eleanor said, meeting his eyes. "Thank you, I would appreciate that very much." Wyatt smiled, a genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Then we will ride out first thing tomorrow morning. You have a horse." Eleanor shook her head, embarrassed. "I came on the stage." "No matter. You can ride behind me. Dusty's strong enough for two." They arranged to meet at the livery stable at dawn. Wyatt paid for the meal despite Eleanor's protests, and they parted ways outside the restaurant. Eleanor watched him walk toward the saloon, not with the eager gait of a man seeking whiskey and cards, but with the measured pace of someone simply looking for a room for the night. She found herself hoping he was as decent as he seemed. That night, Eleanor lay in the cramped room she had rented above the laundry, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. Every time she had let herself hope, every time she had tried to start over, the shadow of her father's crimes had found her. Would this time be any different? And what would Wyatt Carson say when he learned the truth about who she was? She pushed the thoughts aside. She would face that problem when it came. For now, she had a chance at honest work, and she would take it. Dawn broke clear and golden over Dodge City. Eleanor washed her face in the basin, twisted her long dark hair into a practical bun, and put on her least worn dress, a faded blue calico that had seen better days but was at least clean and mended. She packed her few belongings in a carpet bag, paid the last of what she owed for the room, and made her way to the livery stable. Wyatt was already there, checking the cinch on his saddle. His horse was a sturdy roan gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor. Wyatt looked up as Eleanor approached, and she saw approval in his eyes at her promptness. "Morning," he said. "Ready to go?" "As ready as I will be," Eleanor replied. Wyatt helped her up behind him, and Eleanor had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her balance. She could feel the solid warmth of him through his shirt, could smell leather and soap, and something indefinably male. It made her acutely aware that she had not been this close to a man in years, not since before her father's scandal had turned her into a pariah. They rode out of Dodge City as the town was waking up, heading west across the rolling prairie. The morning was cool but promised heat later, and the grasslands stretched out endlessly in all directions, broken only by occasional stands of cottonwoods along creek beds. Meadowlarks sang from fence posts, and in the distance, Eleanor could see a herd of antelope grazing, It's beautiful, she said without thinking. That it is, Wyatt agreed. This is why I love this country. It's big enough that a man can breathe, you know. Back in Texas, I felt like I was always bumping up against somebody else's plans for me. Out here, you can make your own way. Eleanor understood that sentiment more than he knew. Is that why you left Texas? Partly. My family has a ranch down there, good-sized spread. But I have 3 older brothers and they had the running of things well in hand. I was the extra, you know, not needed, not really, so I figured I would find my own place, make my own mark. He glanced back at her. What about you? Where's your family? The question she had been dreading. Eleanor took a breath. My mother passed away 2 years ago. I have no siblings. My father. She hesitated, then chose a version of the truth. My father is gone. Wyatt was quiet for a moment, and Eleanor felt his body shift slightly in the saddle. I'm sorry for your loss. It's hard being alone in the world. Yes, Eleanor said softly. Yes, it is. They rode in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of the horses' hooves soothing. Eleanor found herself relaxing against Wyatt's back, letting herself enjoy the ride despite her worries. The prairie stretched out endlessly, and she could almost believe that out here, away from towns and people who knew the Hartley name, she could find peace. The double bar M came into view about mid-morning. It was a substantial operation, with a 2-story ranch house painted white, a large barn, several corrals, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, fat and healthy-looking. It spoke of prosperity and good management. Michael Morrison knows his business, Wyatt said as they rode up to the house. He came out here right after the war, built this place up from nothing. Martha's his second wife. His first died in childbirth along with the baby. That was before I knew him, but Martha's been good for him. She is kind but no nonsense, if you know what I mean. Eleanor nodded nervously. She had learned to read people quickly in the past 2 years, to gauge whether they would listen to gossip about her name or judge her on her own merits. She hoped the Morrisons were the latter. A woman emerged from the house as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with gray-streaked brown hair and a pleasant, weathered face. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind as she studied Eleanor. Wyatt Carson, as I live and breathe, she called out. We were not expecting you for another few weeks. Everything all right? Wyatt dismounted and helped Eleanor down. Everything's fine, Martha. I brought someone to meet you. This is Eleanor. She is looking for work, and I remembered you mentioned needing help in the house. Martha's eyes swept over Eleanor, taking in the worn dress, the carpet bag, the careful way she held herself. Eleanor met the older woman's gaze steadily, refusing to look away or seem ashamed. She had done nothing wrong, regardless of what her father had done. Can you cook? Martha asked bluntly. Yes, ma'am. Bread, preserves, roasts, stews. I can manage most anything given a decent kitchen. So, yes, ma'am, I can make a dress from scratch, do alterations, mending, fancy work if needed. Keep house. I helped my mother run a boarding house. I know how to clean properly, do laundry, manage household accounts. Martha nodded slowly. Well, you certainly talk like you know what you are doing. Question is, can you actually do it? She paused, then added, and why are you looking for work out here? Pretty girl like you should have plenty of options in town. Here it was, the moment of truth. Eleanor took a breath. I have had some personal difficulties, ma'am. I would rather not discuss the details, but I promise you I'm honest and hardworking. I won't steal, I won't cause trouble, and I'll do any job you set me to without complaining. Martha glanced at Wyatt, who nodded slightly. I vouch for her character, Martha. I would not have brought her out here otherwise. You have not known her but a day, Martha observed. True enough, Wyatt admitted. But sometimes you just know about people. She is good folk, Martha. I would stake my reputation on it. Martha studied them both for a long moment, then sighed. Well, Wyatt Carson's word is good enough for me. The Lord knows I need the help with my rheumatism acting up the way it has been. But understand this, girl, this is a working ranch. We are up before dawn and we work until the day's tasks are done. The pay is $30 a month plus room and board. You will have your own room off the kitchen, and you will eat with the family. You get Sunday afternoons off for personal time, and we expect you at church Sunday mornings. If you prove yourself, we will talk about raising your wages. But if you cause trouble or don't pull your weight, you will be out on your ear faster than you can say jackrabbit. We clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Eleanor said, relief flooding through her. "Crystal clear, and thank you, you won't regret this." "See that I don't," Martha said, but her tone was not unkind. "Come on inside and I will show you around. Wyatt, you want coffee before you head back to town?" "I would not say no," Wyatt said with a smile. Eleanor followed Martha into the house, acutely aware of Wyatt behind her. The interior was clean and comfortable, with polished wood floors and simple but well-made furniture. Lace curtains hung at the windows, and the smell of baking bread filled the air. It felt like a home, warm and welcoming, and Eleanor felt her throat tighten with emotion. It had been so long since she had been in a real home. Martha showed her through the downstairs, the kitchen, the dining room, the parlor, Michael's study. The house was larger than it looked from outside, well-built and thoughtfully designed. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, one for Martha and Michael, one that had belonged to their daughter, and 2 for guests. Eleanor's room was indeed off the kitchen, a small but private space with a narrow bed, a bureau, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the prairie. It was simple but clean, and to Eleanor, it looked like paradise. "You can settle in today, get your bearings," Martha said. "Tomorrow we will start you working. I will warn you now, Michael and I have 6 ranch hands and they eat like horses. Cooking for them 3 times a day is no small task." "Can you handle that?" "Yes, ma'am," Eleanor said firmly. "I can handle it." "Good. Then welcome to the double barm." They returned to the kitchen where Wyatt was sitting at the large wooden table, hat in his hands. Martha poured coffee for all of them, thick and strong, and set out fresh bread with butter. Eleanor sat carefully, still hardly believing her luck. "So you are really planning to settle down in these parts?" Martha asked Wyatt. "By that land you have been eyeing?" "That's the plan," Wyatt confirmed. "The Carson place, as I have been calling it in my head, 500 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it. Old man Henderson's widow is willing to sell for a fair price. I have been saving my pay from the cattle drives, and I have just about enough to make it work." "You will need a house," Martha observed. "That old Henderson place is not fit for man or beast." "I know it. Figure I will tear it down and build new, nothing fancy, just solid. 2 bedrooms, maybe 3, a good kitchen, a barn for the horses, and a few head of cattle to start." He paused, a slight smile crossing his face. "Maybe a porch where a man could sit and watch the sunset." "Sounds like you have been thinking about this a lot," Martha said with a knowing look. "A man building a house like that is usually thinking about filling it." Wyatt's ears reddened slightly, and Eleanor found herself suppressing a smile despite herself. There was something endearing about seeing this confident cowboy embarrassed. "Well, I am not getting any younger," Wyatt said. 28 years old, and I have been drifting for most of them. Time to put down roots, I figure." "You will make some lucky woman a fine husband," Martha said, "and I happen to know several eligible ladies in Dodge who would be happy to make your acquaintance." Wyatt glanced at Eleanor so briefly she almost missed it, then looked back at his coffee. "I will keep that in mind." They talked for a while longer, ranch business mostly, cattle prices and weather predictions and news from town. Eleanor listened quietly, learning about her new home and the people in it. Michael Morrison came in from the range around noon, a tall, lean man with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes. He welcomed Eleanor gruffly but warmly, told her they were glad to have the help, and that was that. She was accepted. Wyatt left that afternoon, riding back toward Dodge City. Eleanor walked out with him to where his horse was tied, suddenly reluctant to see him go. He had shown her kindness when she needed it most, and she found herself wanting to thank him properly but not knowing how. "I appreciate what you did for me," she said as he checked his saddle. "Bringing me out here, vouching for me, you did not have to do that." Wyatt looked at her steadily. "No, I did not have to, but I wanted to." You seemed like you needed a friend, and the Lord knows I have been in that position myself a time or two. Still, thank you. If there is ever anything I can do to repay you—" "No need for repaying," Wyatt said. "But I wouldn't say no to a visit now and then. I come by the double bar, am fairly regular, checking on things, helping Michael with the heavy work when he needs it, so I expect I will be seeing you around." "I would like that," Eleanor said, and realized she meant it. Despite all her caution, despite all her experience with disappointment, she wanted to see Wyatt Carson again. There was something about him, something steady and true, that called to something deep inside her. Wyatt mounted up, settling into the saddle with the easy grace of a man who had spent half his life on horseback. He touched the brim of his hat. "You take care now, Eleanor, and do not let Martha work you too hard. She is a slave driver when she gets going." Eleanor laughed, the sound surprising her. When had she last laughed? "I think I can handle her." "I believe you can," Wyatt said with a smile. Then he turned his horse and rode away, and Eleanor stood watching until he was just a speck on the horizon. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that was both exhausting and satisfying. Martha had not exaggerated about the workload. Eleanor was up before dawn, starting the fire in the great cast iron stove, mixing biscuits, frying bacon and eggs for the ranch hands who came in hungry from the morning chores. After breakfast was cleaned up, there was bread to bake, vegetables to prepare, mending to do, floors to scrub. Lunch was a substantial meal, usually soup or stew with fresh bread. Afternoons were for laundry or preserving or whatever special tasks Martha had planned. Supper was the biggest meal, meat and potatoes and vegetables, pie or cake if there was time. After supper was cleaned up, there was tomorrow's bread to set, the kitchen to ready for morning, and finally, blessedly, bed. Eleanor fell into her narrow bed each night so tired she could barely move, but it was a good tired, an honest tired. She was earning her keep, proving her worth. The ranch hands were respectful and appreciative of her cooking, and Michael and Martha treated her fairly. For the first time in 2 years, Eleanor felt like she was building something, creating a life for herself. And once a week, sometimes twice, Wyatt Carson rode out from town. He always had a reason, some business with Michael, some news from Dodge, some item Martha had asked him to pick up. But he always found time to stop by the kitchen, to accept a cup of coffee and a piece of whatever Eleanor had baked that day. They would talk, easy conversation about nothing much, the weather, the cattle, books they had read, places they had been. Wyatt was well-read despite his cowboy exterior, and he had a dry sense of humor that made Eleanor smile. She found herself looking forward to his visits more than she should. Found herself taking extra care with her appearance on days she thought he might come by, pinning her hair more carefully, wearing her better apron. It was foolish, she told herself. She was a woman with a tainted name and no prospects. He was a man building a future, a man who could have his pick of respectable women. Nothing could come of this attraction, she felt, but her heart did not listen to logic. It was early September, 6 weeks after Eleanor had come to the double bar when everything changed. She was in the kitchen, rolling out pie dough when she heard horses approaching. That was not unusual, but something made her look up, made her wipe her hands and walk to the window. 3 men were dismounting in the yard. They were not locals, she could tell that immediately. They were too well-dressed, too polished, city men. And the way Michael and Martha were standing, stiff and unwelcoming, made Eleanor's stomach clench with dread. One of the men said something Eleanor could not hear. Michael shook his head firmly. The man persisted, pulling out what looked like a photograph. Martha looked at it, then glanced toward the house, her face troubled. Eleanor's blood ran cold. They were looking for her. Somehow, someone had tracked her here. She should run. She should grab her bag and slip out the back door and disappear into the prairie. But where would she go? She had no horse, no money, no plan, and she was so tired of running. Instead, she walked out the front door and down the steps, her head held high. If they were going to drag her name through the mud again, make her pay for her father's sins again, she would face it standing up. The 3 men turned as she approached. The one holding the photograph, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, studied her face, then nodded in satisfaction. "Miss Eleanor Hartley, I presume?" "That's right," Eleanor said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. "Who are you and what do you want?" "My name is Thomas Aldrich. I'm an attorney from St. Louis. I have been searching for you for quite some time, Miss Hartley." "If you are here about my father's debts, I have already told everyone in St. Louis that I have no money," Eleanor said wearily. "I cannot pay what he stole. I have nothing." Aldrich looked puzzled. "I'm not here about debts, Miss Hartley. I'm here to inform you that you have inherited a substantial sum of money." Eleanor stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What? Your father's uncle, Jeremiah Hartley, passed away 3 months ago in San Francisco. He left his entire estate to your father, or, in the event of your father's death or disappearance, to you as his only heir. The estate is valued at approximately $40,000. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Eleanor gripped the porch railing to steady herself. $40,000. It was an inconceivable sum. It was enough to pay back everyone her father had stolen from, enough to clear the family name, enough to— "No," she said. Aldrich blinked. "I beg your pardon," I said. "No, I do not want it." Eleanor's voice was shaking but determined. "That money should go to the people my father stole from, the families he ruined. They are the ones who deserve it, not me. Miss Hartley, I understand your feelings, but the law is quite clear. The money is yours. What you choose to do with it is your business, but you must accept the inheritance first." Martha stepped forward. "Eleanor, honey, think about this. That is a lot of money. It could change your life." "It would not change who I am," Eleanor said. "It would not change my last name or what my father did. I would still be Eleanor Hartley, daughter of a thief and a coward." Her voice broke. "My last name brings shame everywhere I go. Money will not fix that." She turned and walked back into the house, leaving stunned silence behind her. She made it to her room before the tears came, great racking sobs that shook her whole body. It was not fair. None of it was fair. She had spent 2 years paying for her father's crimes, and now the universe was offering her a fortune, and she could not take it without feeling like she was profiting from other people's pain. She did not hear the knock on her door at first, but then Martha's voice came through, gentle but firm. "Eleanor, let me in." Eleanor opened the door. Martha took one look at her tear-stained face and pulled her into a hug, the kind of maternal embrace Eleanor had not felt since her mother died. She clung to the older woman and cried like she had not let herself cry in years. "There now," Martha said, stroking her hair. "Let it out. You have been carrying this burden too long all by yourself." When the storm of tears finally subsided, Martha led Eleanor to the kitchen table and made her tea, the universal remedy for all troubles. The lawyer and his associates had left, though Martha said they would be back tomorrow for an answer. "Now you tell me the whole story," Martha said firmly, "and I mean all of it. What did your father do?" So Eleanor told her. The whole sordid tale of Marcus Hartley's embezzlement, the families he had ruined, the way he had vanished in the night, leaving Eleanor and her mother to face the consequences. She told her about the threats, the way former friends had turned on them, the poverty and the shame. She told her about her mother's death, about the 2 years of wandering, trying to outrun a name that followed her everywhere. Martha listened without interrupting, her face growing harder with each revelation. When Eleanor finished, the older woman was silent for a long moment. "That is quite a burden for one young woman to carry," Martha finally said, "and none of it your fault." "But it's my name," Eleanor said. "My blood. People see the name Hartley and they see a thief." "People are fools," Martha said bluntly. "You are not responsible for your father's sins, Eleanor. You are only responsible for your own actions, and from what I have seen, you are one of the most honest, hard-working young women I have ever met." "The money, though," Eleanor said. "How can I take that money knowing where it came from, knowing what the Hartley name means?" "You take it and you use it to do good," Martha said simply. "You take it and you pay back every cent your father stole with interest. You take it and you clear your family name." And then you take what is left and you build a life for yourself, a good life, the kind of life you deserve. It's not that simple. No, but it's not as complicated as you are making it either. Eleanor, you have been punishing yourself for 2 years for something you did not do. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself. Maybe it's time to accept that you deserve good things too. Eleanor wanted to believe her. She wanted so badly to believe that she could take that money, make things right, and somehow find peace. But the fear was still there, the deep certainty that she did not deserve redemption. That evening, Wyatt rode in unexpectedly. Michael must have sent word to him in town because he came straight to the kitchen where Eleanor was mechanically preparing supper. Martha tactfully disappeared, leaving them alone. "I heard what happened," Wyatt said without preamble. "Martha told me the whole story." Eleanor kept her eyes on the potatoes she was peeling. "Then you know what kind of family I come from, you know what my name means." "I know that your father was a coward and a thief," Wyatt said, "and I know that you are nothing like him." "How can you know that?" Eleanor's voice was anguished. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Wyatt said firmly. He crossed the kitchen and gently turned her to face him, taking the paring knife from her trembling hands. "Eleanor, look at me." She did, and what she saw in his blue eyes made her breath catch. There was no judgment there, no condemnation. Only warmth and something that looked dangerously like affection. "I know you are honest," Wyatt said. "I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you are kind to the ranch hands even when they track mud through your clean kitchen. I know you save the best biscuits for the youngest of them because you noticed he is still growing and is always hungry. I know you helped Martha through that bad spell with her rheumatism without being asked, taking on extra work so she could rest." He paused. "I know that when you smile, which is not nearly often enough, it lights up your whole face. And I know that you deserve happiness, Eleanor Hartley, regardless of what your father did or did not do." Eleanor felt tears welling up again. "My last name brings shame everywhere I go," she whispered. "Even with the money to pay back what he stole, people will always know. They will always judge." Wyatt was quiet for a moment, his hands still gentle on her shoulders. Then he said very softly, "Take mine instead." Eleanor's heart stopped. "What?" "Take my name instead," Wyatt repeated, his eyes never leaving hers. "Marry me, Eleanor. Be Eleanor Carson. Start fresh with a name that's clean, that's yours, that nobody can take from you." "Wyatt, you cannot possibly. We barely know each other." "You cannot throw away your future on someone like me." "I'm not throwing away anything," Wyatt said. "I'm asking you to build a future with me, and maybe we have not known each other long by some standards, but I know what I feel. I have known since that first day in Dodge City that there was something special about you, something worth fighting for." His voice roughened with emotion. "I'm not a rich man, Eleanor, and I'm not fancy. But I'm honest and I work hard, and I swear to you I would spend every day of my life trying to make you happy. I would give you a home, a name you can be proud of, and all the love I have in me. That is what I am offering." Eleanor could hardly breathe. It was too much, too fast. It was everything she had ever wanted and nothing she thought she deserved. "I cannot let you do this," she said, even as her heart screamed at her to say yes. "You could have any woman you want, someone respectable, someone without a past." "I want you," Wyatt said simply. "Just you, Eleanor. Your past does not scare me. Your father's crimes do not change how I feel. And that money you inherited, that can go to making things right, paying back what was stolen, just like you want. But after that, whatever is left, that is yours. That is ours if you will have me. We can use it to build the Carson place into something fine, something to be proud of. We can build a life together." "Why?" Eleanor whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because I am in love with you," Wyatt said, and the simple honesty of it took her breath away. "I think I have been since that first day when you lifted your chin and told me you were not a charity case. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and you deserve someone who sees that, who sees you for who you really are, not who your father was. So I am asking again, Eleanor Hartley. Will you marry me? Will you take my name and let me love you the way you deserve to be loved?" Eleanor looked into his eyes, those steady blue eyes that had been kind from the first moment, and something inside her broke open. All the fear, all the shame, all the loneliness she had been carrying for so long seemed to crack and fall away, leaving something new and fragile and precious in its place. Hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Wyatt Carson, I will marry you. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming up. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she melted against him. It was her first real kiss, and it felt like coming home, like finding a place where she belonged. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. I swear to you, Eleanor, you will never regret this. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know you are loved. I already know, Eleanor said, and realized it was true. Against all odds, against all logic, she believed him. She trusted him. And more than that, she loved him. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, between the coffee and conversation and quiet kindnesses, she had fallen completely in love with this cowboy who saw her for who she was, not what her name meant. The kitchen door banged open and Martha rushed in, followed by Michael. Well, Martha demanded. Did you ask her? He asked, Eleanor said, unable to stop smiling. And I said yes. Martha let out a whoop of joy and pulled them both into a hug. Michael shook Wyatt's hand solemnly, but there was a pleased glint in his eyes. About time you settled down, son, Michael said. And you picked a good woman. We are going to miss her around here, though. Who says she is going anywhere? Wyatt said. At least not right away. The house is not even started yet. If you all don't mind keeping her on until the Carson place is ready, I would be much obliged. Give us time to court properly, have a decent wedding. She can stay as long as she needs, Martha said firmly. But we are having that wedding before winter sets in. I am not waiting until spring to see you two properly married. And so it was decided. Wyatt returned to town that night to set his affairs in order, to finalize the purchase of the land and start planning the house. Eleanor met with the lawyer the next day and formally accepted the inheritance, with the understanding that the majority of it would go to repaying her father's victims. Aldrich, to his credit, helped her draw up a list of all the families who had lost money and within a week had begun the process of restitution. After all debts were paid and the lawyer's fees settled, Eleanor was left with just over $8,000, a tidy sum but not the fortune she had inherited. It was enough to help build the Carson place into a real ranch, enough to provide a solid start for her and Wyatt's life together. And it was money she could accept with a clear conscience. The word about Eleanor's true identity spread through Dodge City and the surrounding ranches like wildfire. Eleanor waited for the rejection, for the cold shoulders and turned backs. But to her amazement, the response was almost entirely sympathetic. The fact that she was using the inheritance to pay back her father's victims earned her respect. The fact that Wyatt Carson, a man known for his integrity, had chosen her, vouched for her character in a way nothing else could. And the fact that she had been working honestly for months, earning her keep through hard labor rather than trading on her unexpected fortune, spoke volumes. There were a few who still looked at her askance, who whispered about bad blood and apple falling from trees, but they were in the minority. Most people were willing to judge Eleanor on her own merits, and she found herself slowly, cautiously, letting go of the shame she had carried for so long. Wyatt came out to the double bar 3 times a week now, sometimes more. He brought Eleanor wildflowers from the prairie, ribbons from the mercantile, books he thought she would enjoy. They talked for hours, learning each other's minds and hearts. He told her about growing up in Texas, the middle child in a large, boisterous family. She told him about her childhood in St. Louis before everything fell apart, about her love of reading and her dream of someday having a real home again. They talked about the future, about the ranch they would build together, about children they might have, about growing old side by side. And they fell deeper in love with each passing day. The house began to take shape on the Carson land. Wyatt hired carpenters from Dodge City, and several of the ranch hands from the Double Bar M volunteered their time to help with the heavy work. Michael donated lumber from his own stores, refusing to let Wyatt pay for it. Martha and several other ranch wives started putting together household goods, quilts and dishes and linens, all the things a new home would need. It was a community effort, and Eleanor was overwhelmed by the generosity. They set the wedding date for the first Saturday in October, giving them time to finish at least the main structure of the house. It would not be completely furnished, but it would have a roof and walls and a working fireplace, which was enough. The wedding would be held in the small church in Dodge City, followed by a reception at the Double Bar M. Eleanor had no family to invite, but Martha had insisted on treating her like a daughter. The older woman helped her make a wedding dress from ivory silk that Wyatt had purchased in town, with lace at the collar and cuffs. It was simple but beautiful, and when Eleanor tried it on the week before the wedding, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked happy. She looked like a bride. The night before the wedding, Eleanor sat on the porch of the ranch house with Martha, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and rose. The air was crisp with the promise of fall, and in the distance, she could hear the lowing of cattle settling down for the night. "Are you nervous?" Martha asked. "A little," Eleanor admitted. "Not about marrying Wyatt. I have never been more certain of anything. But about being a wife, running a household, all of that. What if I fail?" "You won't," Martha said confidently. "But even if you stumble a bit, that is what marriage is for, having someone to catch you when you fall and catching them in return. Wyatt is a good man, Eleanor. He will be patient and kind, and you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. You have survived things that would have broken a lesser woman. You will not just survive marriage, you will thrive in it." Eleanor reached over and squeezed Martha's hand. "Thank you for everything. For giving me a chance when you had no reason to, for being kind to me, for helping me believe I deserved happiness." "Oh, honey," Martha said, her eyes bright with tears. "You did not need me for that. You just needed to see yourself the way the rest of us see you. But I am honored to have played a small part in your story." They sat together in companionable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, and Eleanor felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Tomorrow she would marry Wyatt Carson. Tomorrow she would become Eleanor Carson, leaving behind the shame and pain of her father's name. Tomorrow her new life would truly begin. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the sky a brilliant blue without a cloud in sight. Eleanor woke early, too excited to sleep, and spent the morning helping Martha with the food preparation for the reception, before finally being shooed upstairs to get ready. Several ranch wives arrived to help, women who had become friends over the past months. They fussed over Eleanor's hair, pinning it up with small white flowers, and helped her into the ivory silk dress. When they finally pronounced her ready, Eleanor looked in the mirror and felt tears prick her eyes. She looked like a bride. She looked like a woman starting her life over, and the joy of it was almost overwhelming. The church in Dodge City was packed. It seemed like everyone in the county had come to see the wedding. Eleanor recognized ranch hands from the Double Bar M and neighboring spreads, shopkeepers from town, families from the outlying homesteads. They were all here to witness her marriage, to celebrate her happiness, and the realization made her throat tight with emotion. But when she walked down the aisle on Michael's arm, she only had eyes for Wyatt. He stood at the front of the church looking handsome in a new suit, his dark hair slicked back, his blue eyes fixed on her with an expression of such love and wonder that it took her breath away. This man, this good, honest, decent man had chosen her, had offered her his name, his future, his heart, and she was going to spend the rest of her life proving she was worthy of that gift. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They spoke the traditional vows, promising to love and cherish, to honor and protect in sickness and health for richer or poorer, as long as they both should live. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wyatt kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. They rode to the double bar M in a wagon decorated with ribbons and wildflowers, arriving to find the yard set up for a celebration. Long tables groaned under the weight of food, a fiddle player was tuning up for dancing, and people were already gathering to congratulate them. Eleanor was hugged and kissed and welcomed as Mrs. Carson by what seemed like half of Kansas. The few suspicious looks, the few who still judged her by her father's crimes, were drowned out by the overwhelming warmth and acceptance of the community. She was one of them now, the wife of Wyatt Carson, and they were claiming her as their own. They danced their first dance as husband and wife to a sweet, simple tune, swaying together under the early evening sky. Wyatt held her close, and Eleanor rested her head against his shoulder, feeling safe and loved and happier than she had ever imagined possible. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For giving me your name, for giving me a future, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable." Wyatt pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Eleanor Carson, you have always been worthy of love. I'm just the lucky man who gets to spend the rest of his life proving it to you." They stayed at the reception until late, dancing and laughing and celebrating with their friends. But finally, as the moon rose high and the stars came out in their thousands, they said their goodbyes and rode out to their new home. The Carson place looked different in the moonlight, silvery and almost magical. Wyatt helped Eleanor down from the wagon and swept her into his arms, carrying her over the threshold of their new home. Inside, someone had lit lamps and built a fire in the fireplace. The main room was sparsely furnished, just a table and chairs, a sofa, a rug on the floor, but it was clean and warm and theirs. "It's not much yet," Wyatt said, setting Eleanor carefully on her feet, "but we will make it into a home together." "It's perfect," Eleanor said and meant it. "It's ours, and that makes it perfect." They stood in the center of their new home, holding each other, and Eleanor felt the last of her fears and doubts fall away. She was Eleanor Carson now. She had a home, a husband who loved her, a future bright with promise. Her father's crimes no longer defined her. His name no longer brought her shame. She was free. That night in the bedroom Wyatt had so carefully prepared for them, they came together as husband and wife with a tenderness and passion that left Eleanor breathless. Wyatt was gentle with her, patient and loving, making her first time beautiful instead of frightening. And when they lay tangled together afterward, skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This man, this marriage, this life was what she had been searching for all along. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, but a joyful one. Eleanor learned the rhythms of running her own household, managing the cooking and cleaning and laundry for just the two of them instead of a full crew. Wyatt worked from sunup to sundown, building up the ranch, buying cattle, mending fences, doing all the 1,000 tasks that came with starting a new operation. They were busy and tired and blissfully happy. In November, Eleanor received a letter from the lawyer in St. Louis. All of her father's victims had been repaid in full, with interest. Several had written to thank her, to tell her that her integrity had restored their faith in the Hartley name. One elderly woman had written that Eleanor had given her back her peace of mind, knowing that the money she had lost was being returned. The letters made Eleanor cry, but they were healing tears. She was finally free of her father's legacy. The Hartley name might still carry shame in some circles, but she had done what she could to make amends, and she was Eleanor Carson now anyway. That was the name that mattered. Winter came cold and hard to the Kansas plains. Snow piled up in the yard and ice formed on the water troughs. Wyatt spent long days making sure the cattle were fed and sheltered, coming home exhausted and half-frozen. Eleanor would have hot food waiting, a warm fire, and a warmer welcome. They spent the long winter evenings playing cards, reading aloud to each other, talking about their plans for the spring. And they spent the long winter nights learning each other's bodies, finding joy and pleasure and comfort in each other's arms. In January, Eleanor realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be certain, then told Wyatt one evening over supper, her heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. "I think I am with child," she said quietly. Wyatt's fork clattered to his plate. "What, are you certain?" "As certain as I can be." "It's still early, but all the signs are there." She searched his face anxiously. "Are you pleased?" For answer, Wyatt swept her into his arms and spun her around the kitchen, laughing with pure joy. "Pleased, Eleanor, I am thrilled. A baby. We are going to have a baby." He set her down carefully, then immediately looked stricken. "Should I have done that? Did I hurt you? What do you need? Should you be sitting down?" Eleanor laughed at his sudden anxiety. "I am pregnant, not made of glass, but yes, I would like to sit down and maybe you could hold me for a while." They sat together on the sofa, Wyatt's arms around her, his hand resting protectively over her still flat belly. They talked about names and nurseries, and whether the baby would have his eyes or hers. They talked about the future, about raising their children on this land they were building together, about teaching them to be strong and kind and honest. And Eleanor felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. She was going to be a mother. She was going to give her child everything she had lost: a stable home, 2 loving parents, a name to be proud of. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Eleanor continued her work around the ranch, slowing down only as her belly grew too large to be ignored. Martha came by frequently, fussing and bringing advice and baby clothes she had saved from when her own daughter was small. The ranch wives threw Eleanor a party, showering her with gifts and wisdom about childbirth and motherhood. Wyatt became increasingly protective, trying to keep Eleanor from doing any heavy work, until she finally had to remind him firmly that women had been having babies since the dawn of time, and she was perfectly capable of managing. In September of 1879, on a warm night with a full moon hanging heavy in the sky, Eleanor went into labor. Wyatt rode for the doctor in town while Martha stayed with Eleanor, coaching her through the contractions with calm efficiency. The labor was long and hard, but Eleanor was strong, and just after dawn, she delivered a healthy baby boy. Wyatt made it back with the doctor just in time to hear his son's first cry. He burst into the bedroom, looking terrified and hopeful all at once, and stopped dead at the sight of Eleanor propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing with a tiny bundle in her arms. "Come meet your son," Eleanor said softly. Wyatt approached slowly, reverently, and looked down at the red, wrinkled face of his firstborn, his eyes filled with tears. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are both perfect. Eleanor, I love you so much." "I love you too," Eleanor said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at his son, Wyatt said, "What about James? It was my grandfather's name, James Carson. It's a good, strong name." "James Carson," Eleanor repeated, testing it out. She looked down at her son, at his tiny fingers and rosebud mouth. "Yes, that's perfect. Hello, James. Welcome to the world." The weeks after James's birth were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Eleanor learned to feed and change and soothe her son, falling into the rhythms of new motherhood. Wyatt was besotted with the baby, coming in from the range several times a day just to check on them, holding James with a gentleness that made Eleanor's heart melt. They were a family now, complete and whole, and the joy of it filled their little house to overflowing. As James grew from infant to toddler, the Carson ranch prospered. Wyatt's careful management and hard work paid off, and they were able to expand their herd, hire a couple of ranch hands, add onto the house. They built a proper barn and several outbuildings, dug a well closer to the house, planted an orchard. The Carson place became known as one of the best-run ranches in the area, and Wyatt's reputation grew along with it. Eleanor thrived in her role as wife, mother, and rancher's partner. She kept the books for the ranch, discovering that she had a head for numbers and business. She managed the household with efficiency and warmth, making their home a place where friends and neighbors gathered. And she raised James with a fierce love and determination, teaching him to be honest and kind, to work hard and treat people fairly. In the spring of 1881, Eleanor gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah after Wyatt's mother. Sarah was a beautiful baby with her father's blue eyes and her mother's dark hair, and James, now a sturdy 2-year-old, was enchanted with his baby sister. Wyatt walked around in a daze of happiness, marveling that he could be so blessed. The years rolled on, bringing both joys and challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease and crops that failed. There were the normal struggles of raising children, the scraped knees and childhood illnesses and teenage rebellions. But through it all, Eleanor and Wyatt stood together, their love deepening and maturing with each passing year. The Hartley name faded into distant memory. Eleanor was known as Mrs. Carson, Wyatt's wife, James and Sarah's mother, a pillar of the community. No one spoke of her father's crimes anymore. She had proven, through years of honest living and good works, that she was her own person, defined by her choices rather than her lineage. In 1885, when Eleanor was 30, she and Wyatt took a trip to St. Louis. It was the first time Eleanor had been back since she fled 7 years earlier, and she was nervous, but she was also curious. She wanted to see the city of her childhood, wanted to face the ghosts of her past from a place of strength and security. They left James and Sarah with Martha and Michael, who doted on the children and were delighted to have them for a few weeks. Then Eleanor and Wyatt boarded the train east, watching the prairie give way to farmland and then to the growing sprawl of the city, St. Louis had changed, or perhaps Eleanor had changed. The city that had seemed so large and overwhelming when she was 22 now seemed manageable, even small. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in good restaurants, visited the sights. And Eleanor went to see the families her father had wronged. Most were surprised but welcoming. They thanked her again for the restitution, told her how much it had meant to them. They could see that she was happy and prosperous, that she had made a good life for herself, and they were genuinely pleased for her. A few were still bitter, still angry at the Hartley name, and Eleanor could not blame them. But she had done what she could to make amends, and she left St. Louis with her head held high, feeling like she had finally, truly, closed that chapter of her life. On the train ride back to Kansas, Wyatt held her hand and looked at her with such love and pride that Eleanor felt tears gather in her eyes. "You are an amazing woman, Eleanor Carson," he said. "The strongest person I know. I am so proud to be your husband." "I could not have done any of this without you," Eleanor said. "You gave me your name when I needed it most. You gave me a home, a family, a future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Wyatt corrected. "That's what love is, Eleanor, building a life together, making each other stronger. And I would not change a single moment of the past 7 years, not one." They returned to the Carson ranch to find their children healthy and happy, the ranch running smoothly, and their life waiting to be lived. Eleanor slipped back into the familiar rhythms of her days with a sense of gratitude so profound it was almost overwhelming. This life, this family, this love, it was more than she had ever dared to hope for. The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and celebrations. James grew into a tall, serious boy with his father's steady nature and his mother's quick mind. Sarah was spirited and loving, with a laugh that could light up a room. In 1887, Eleanor gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Michael and Martha after the Morrisons, who had given Eleanor her first chance at a new life. The twins were a handful, energetic and mischievous, but they filled the house with laughter and joy. Wyatt expanded the ranch further, becoming one of the most successful ranchers in the region. He was respected and admired, known for his integrity and fairness. He served on the town council, helped establish a school in the growing community, was a leader in bringing the railroad spur out to their area. But for all his success and prominence, he never forgot what mattered most, his family. Every evening, no matter how busy the day had been, Wyatt made time to sit with Eleanor on the porch they had built together, watching the sunset over the prairie they had tamed together. They would talk about their day, their children, their dreams for the future. And Eleanor would think about that day in Dodge City, when a stranger with kind eyes had offered her a meal and changed her life forever. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him one evening, when they had been married almost 15 years. "Marrying me so quickly, taking on my problems, giving me your name." Wyatt looked at her in genuine surprise. "Regret it? Eleanor, marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You are the love of my life, the mother of my children, my partner in everything. Why would I possibly regret that? I just wonder sometimes what your life would have been like if you had married someone else, someone without a scandalous past, someone who came to you free and clear." Wyatt took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I don't want to imagine that life because it would not have you in it. Eleanor, you were never a burden to me, never a problem to be solved. You were a gift, a blessing I did not deserve but was lucky enough to receive. From the moment I met you, I knew you were special, and every day since has only proven me right." He leaned over and kissed her softly. "I love you, Eleanor Carson. I love the woman you are, the mother you have become, the partner you have been. I love our life together, and I would not change a single thing." Eleanor kissed him back, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. She believed him. After all these years, after all the proof of his devotion, she finally, completely believed that she was worthy of this love, this life, this happiness. As their children grew, Eleanor and Wyatt made sure they knew the story of how their parents met, how their mother had overcome shame and sorrow to build a new life. They taught them that mistakes could be overcome, that names were less important than character, that love and hard work could conquer almost anything. They raised them to be honest and kind, strong and compassionate, to judge people by their actions rather than their lineage. James, the eldest, showed an early aptitude for ranching. He worked alongside his father from a young age, learning every aspect of the business. By the time he was 20, he was managing much of the day-to-day operations, and Wyatt began to talk about eventually turning the Carson Ranch over to him. Sarah inherited her mother's love of books and learning. She became a teacher at the local school, beloved by her students and respected by the community. She married a young lawyer from Dodge City, and they built a house on Carson land, staying close to the family. The twins, Michael and Martha, were as different as night and day despite being born minutes apart. Michael was adventurous and restless, eventually heading west to Colorado to try his hand at mining and trading. Martha was quieter, artistic, spending hours sketching the prairie landscape and the ranch animals. She never married, content to live at the Carson Ranch, helping her parents and eventually her brother James as they aged. In 1893, Eleanor and Wyatt celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together friends and family from across Kansas and beyond. The Morrisons, now in their 70s but still spry, made the journey out to the Carson Ranch. Ranch hands past and present came to pay their respects. The celebration lasted 2 days, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could possibly eat. On the second evening, as the party was winding down and the stars were coming out, Wyatt pulled Eleanor aside. They walked out to the spot where their house had first been built, where they had started their life together 15 years before. "Do you remember when this was just empty prairie?" Wyatt asked, gesturing at the sprawling ranch complex, the barns and outbuildings, the corrals and fenced pastures. "When we had nothing but hope and hard work, I remember," Eleanor said. "I remember being terrified and hopeful and more in love than I thought possible. And now I am still in love," Eleanor said with a smile. "More even, because now I know what we can weather together. Now I know that what we built was real and lasting." Wyatt pulled her close, and they stood together in the gathering dark, listening to the distant sounds of their children's laughter, the lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the grass. This was their kingdom, built from nothing, sustained by love and determination. This was the life they had made together. "I told you once that I would spend every day trying to make you happy," Wyatt said softly. Do you think I've succeeded? Eleanor thought about the past 15 years. The hard work and the laughter, the struggles and the triumphs. The children they had raised, the home they had built, the love that had only grown deeper and stronger with time. She thought about the girl she had been, ashamed and alone, running from a name that brought nothing but pain. And she thought about the woman she had become, strong and confident, surrounded by family and friends, bearing a name she was proud of. "You have exceeded every expectation," Eleanor said, reaching up to cup his face. "You gave me more than happiness, Wyatt. You gave me myself. You helped me see that I was worth loving, worth building a life with. You gave me a family, a home, a future. You gave me everything." They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, and Eleanor felt a contentment so complete it brought tears to her eyes. She was Eleanor Carson, wife and mother, rancher and friend. The Hartley name was just a distant memory, a shadow from a life she had left behind. She had taken his name instead, and in doing so, she had found herself. The next years brought new joys and new challenges. James married a local girl, Rose, and they gave Eleanor and Wyatt their first grandchild, a boy they named Wyatt James Carson. Holding her grandson for the first time, looking into his tiny face, Eleanor marveled at the continuity of life, at the way love and family extended forward into the future. Sarah and her husband, Thomas, added 3 more grandchildren to the growing Carson clan. Michael eventually returned from Colorado with a wife and started a trading business in Dodge City. Even Martha, who everyone thought would remain single, surprised them all by marrying a widower, a gentle man who shared her love of art and quiet living. As Eleanor and Wyatt moved into their 40s, they began to step back slightly from the daily operations of the ranch, letting James and Rose take over more of the management. They were not retiring exactly, but slowing down, taking more time to enjoy their grandchildren, to sit on the porch in the evenings, to appreciate what they had built. The Carson Ranch had become one of the most successful in Kansas, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. The Carson name was respected and admired. When people spoke of Wyatt and Eleanor Carson, they spoke of a love story, of 2 people who had built something lasting and beautiful together. No one spoke of shame anymore. No one whispered about scandals or crimes. Eleanor had truly left her past behind. On their 20th anniversary in 1898, Wyatt gave Eleanor a gift she had not expected: a bound book, hand-lettered, telling the story of their life together. He had worked on it in secret for months, writing down all the memories he treasured most. The day they met in Dodge City. Their wedding, the births of each of their children, the struggles and triumphs of building the ranch, the quiet moments and the grand celebrations. It was a love letter, a family history, a testament to what they had created together. Eleanor read it with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the beauty of it, by the love that shone through every word. When she finished, she looked at her husband, this man who had given her everything, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me," she said. "Thank you, Wyatt, for this, for everything, for 20 years of the most incredible life I could have imagined." 20 years down, another 50 to go, Wyatt said with a smile. "I plan on growing very old with you, Eleanor Carson." "That sounds perfect," Eleanor said, and kissed him. The new century arrived with celebration and optimism. The Carson family gathered at the ranch for New Year's Eve 1899, watching the clock tick over to 1900. They stood together, 3 generations of Carsons, welcoming the future with hope and joy. Eleanor looked around at her children and grandchildren, at the ranch that had become their legacy, at the man who had made it all possible, and felt a peace so profound it was almost spiritual. She had come so far from that frightened, ashamed girl who had arrived in Dodge City 22 years before. She had been Eleanor Hartley then, a name that brought shame wherever she went. But Wyatt Carson had offered her his name, his love, his future, and in taking them, she had found herself. She had become Eleanor Carson, and that name meant something. It meant love and family, hard work and integrity, a life well lived. As the years continued to pass, Eleanor and Wyatt settled into the comfortable rhythm of their later years. They were grandparents now, then great-grandparents, watching their family tree spread and grow. The ranch continued to prosper under James's management, with his sons learning the business just as he had learned it from Wyatt. Eleanor kept herself busy with the things she loved, her garden, her books, her needlework. She was active in the church and the community, beloved by everyone who knew her. Young women would come to her for advice and she would tell them her story, tell them that mistakes could be overcome, that love could conquer shame, that they were never defined by their past, but only by what they chose to do with their future. And every evening, as the sun set over the prairie, Eleanor and Wyatt would sit together on their porch, holding hands, watching the land they loved turn gold and then purple in the fading light. They would talk about their day, their family, their memories. And sometimes they would just sit in comfortable silence, content simply to be together. In the spring of 1908, Martha Morrison passed away peacefully in her sleep, at the age of 82. Michael had died 2 years before, and now they were reunited. The funeral was large, a testament to how beloved the Morrisons had been in the community. Eleanor and Wyatt attended, grieving the loss of the people who had been instrumental in bringing them together, who had given Eleanor her first chance at a new life. "She was like a mother to me," Eleanor said as they stood by Martha's grave. "When I had no one, when I thought I was worthless, she saw something worth saving. I owe her everything." "She loved you like a daughter," Wyatt said gently. "And she was so proud of the woman you became, the life we built. She told me that often, that you were proof that everyone deserves a second chance." Eleanor wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "Then I will honor her by continuing to live the life she helped me find. By being the woman she believed I could be." And she did. Even as she aged, even as her hair turned silver and her steps slowed, Eleanor Carson remained a force in her family and community. She was the matriarch of the Carson clan, wise and loving, the person everyone turned to for guidance and comfort. She watched her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren thrive, knowing that she had helped build something that would last long after she was gone. Wyatt, too, aged gracefully. His hair went white and his face creased with wrinkles, but his eyes remained as blue and as kind as they had been that day in Dodge City so many years before. He still walked the ranch every morning, checking on the cattle and the land, though he moved more slowly now. He still sat with Eleanor every evening, still held her hand, still told her he loved her at least once a day. On a warm September evening in 1913, exactly 35 years after they had met, Eleanor and Wyatt sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were both in their late 50s now, still healthy and active but aware that they had lived more years than they had left to live. "Do you ever think about that day in Dodge City?" Eleanor asked, a question she had asked many times over the years. "Every day," Wyatt said, as he always did. "Best day of my life, meeting you, changed everything." "You changed everything," Eleanor corrected. "You saw something in me I could not see in myself. You offered me hope when I had none. You gave me your name when mine brought nothing but shame." "And you made that name mean something," Wyatt said. "You took Carson and made it stand for love and family and doing right by people. We did that together, Eleanor, built something real and lasting." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. It was a sight they had seen thousands of times, but it never got old. The prairie was in their blood now, as much a part of them as each other. "I love you, Wyatt Carson," Eleanor said softly, "more than I can ever express. Thank you for 35 years of the most beautiful life a woman could ask for." "I love you too, Eleanor Carson," Wyatt replied, "and I look forward to 35 more." Eleanor smiled, leaning into his shoulder. "That would be nice," she said. "That would be very nice indeed." They continued to live and love, to watch their family grow, to tend the ranch they had built together. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1918, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a celebration that lasted 3 days and brought together people from all over Kansas and beyond. The Carson name had become legendary in the region, synonymous with integrity and success. As they moved into their 60s, Eleanor and Wyatt finally began to truly retire. James and Rose had long since taken over the ranch, and they were doing a fine job. Wyatt and Eleanor spent their days in the pursuits they loved: reading, gardening, spending time with family. They took trips, visiting Sarah in Dodge City, Michael in Colorado, their various grandchildren scattered across the West. But they always came home to the Carson Ranch, to the house they had built together, to the land they had tamed and loved. It was their place, their sanctuary, the physical manifestation of the life they had created. In the summer of 1925, when Eleanor was 69 and Wyatt was 73, they celebrated their 47th anniversary quietly, just the two of them. They had a simple dinner at home, then walked out to watch the sunset from the spot where their house had first been built, where Wyatt had proposed all those years ago. 47 years, Eleanor marveled. Can you believe it? It feels like yesterday and forever ago all at once. Best 47 years of my life, Wyatt said. He was moving slower now, his joints stiff with age, but his mind was still sharp and his love was still strong. Mine too, Eleanor agreed. She was smaller now, her body worn by years of hard work and childbearing, but she was still beautiful to Wyatt, still the girl who had lifted her chin and refused to be a charity case. They stood together as the sun set, as they had stood together for nearly 5 decades, and Eleanor felt a deep satisfaction. She had lived a good life, a full life, a life of love and family and purpose. She had overcome shame and sorrow to build something beautiful. She had taken his name and made it her own, made it mean something wonderful. She was Eleanor Carson, and she was proud of everything that name represented. The seasons continued to turn, bringing the natural progression of life and age. Wyatt and Eleanor both knew their time was growing shorter, but they faced it with the same courage and grace they had faced everything else. They made sure their affairs were in order, that their children knew how much they were loved, that the ranch would continue to prosper after they were gone. In the spring of 1926, Wyatt became ill. It started as a cough, nothing much, but it progressed quickly to something more serious. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and did what he could, but Wyatt was 74 years old and his body was tired. Eleanor nursed him faithfully, sitting by his bedside day and night, holding his hand, talking to him, loving him. On a quiet April morning, with Eleanor beside him and his family gathered around, Wyatt Carson passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was buried on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone marker that read, Wyatt Carson, beloved husband, father, and friend. He lived honestly and loved deeply. Eleanor mourned him deeply but not desperately. They had had 48 beautiful years together, longer than most people were blessed with. He had given her everything, shown her what love truly meant, helped her become the woman she was always meant to be. She grieved for the loss of his presence, but she was grateful beyond measure for the life they had shared. She lived on for 3 more years, staying on the ranch, surrounded by her family. She watched her great-great-grandchildren being born, saw the Carson name continue into yet another generation. She told stories about Wyatt, about their life together, making sure that everyone knew what an extraordinary man he had been. On a warm September evening in 1929, 51 years to the day after she had met Wyatt in Dodge City, Eleanor Carson passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 73 years old, and she had lived a full, rich, beautiful life. She was buried beside Wyatt on the hillside, her marker reading, Eleanor Carson, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She overcame shame with grace and lived with love. The Carson Ranch continued to thrive under James and his children and grandchildren, a lasting legacy of the love and hard work of its founders. The story of Wyatt and Eleanor was passed down through the generations, becoming the foundation myth of the Carson family. They told of how a cowboy had met a woman burdened by shame and had offered her his name, his love, his future. They told of how she had taken that gift and transformed it into something beautiful, how together they had built a life and a legacy that lasted long after they were gone. And every evening, as the sun set over the prairie, members of the Carson family would stand on that hillside where Wyatt and Eleanor were buried, looking out over the land they had loved, and they would remember. They would remember that love conquers shame, that everyone deserves a second chance, that names are less important than character, and that two people working together can build something that lasts forever. The story of Eleanor Hartley, who became Eleanor Carson, was a story of redemption and love, of courage and second chances. It was a story that proved that the past does not have to define the future, that shame can be overcome with grace, and that sometimes, when you are at your lowest point, someone will come along and offer you exactly what you need to start again. All you have to do is be brave enough to take it. And Eleanor had been brave. She had taken his name instead of carrying the burden of shame forever. And in doing so, she had found not just a new identity, but herself. She had found love and family and purpose. She had found home. The legacy of Wyatt and Eleanor Carson lived on in the land they had tamed, in the children they had raised, in the name they had made meaningful. Their love story became legend, told and retold across the generations, inspiring others to believe in second chances, in the power of love, in the possibility of redemption. And on that hillside where they lay together for eternity, overlooking the prairie they had loved, the wind whispered their story to anyone who would listen. The story of a woman who said her last name brought shame everywhere she went, and the cowboy who replied, "Take mine instead." It was a simple offer that changed everything, a moment of grace that reverberated through the years, proving that love, in the end, was the most powerful force of all. Their story was complete, their lives fully lived, their love eternal. They had faced hardship and overcome it. They had built something lasting from nothing. They had loved deeply and honestly for nearly 5 decades. And when the end came, they faced it knowing they had lived well, loved well, and left a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The Carson Ranch stood as testament to what they had built, but the real legacy was in the hearts of their descendants, in the values they had instilled, in the love they had demonstrated every single day of their lives together. Eleanor Carson, who had once been Eleanor Hartley, a woman running from shame, had become a matriarch, a legend, a symbol of redemption and grace. And Wyatt Carson, the cowboy who had seen past her name to the woman beneath, had become the embodiment of true love, of seeing people for who they really are rather than what others say about them. Their story ended, but their love never did. It lived on in every Carson who came after them, in every child who heard the tale and believed in second chances, in every person who learned that shame could be overcome, and names could be changed, and love could conquer all. Wyatt and Eleanor Carson had lived and loved and built something beautiful together, and that was the greatest legacy anyone could leave behind. They had proven that when you find the right person, when you are brave enough to take a chance on love, when you work together toward a common goal, anything is possible. Even transforming shame into pride, even building an empire from nothing, even creating a love that would be remembered and celebrated for generations to come. Their journey from that dusty street in Dodge City to eternal rest on a Kansas hillside was complete, and it was beautiful, and it was theirs. Forever and always, Wyatt and Eleanor Carson, two souls who had found each other when they needed it most, and had built a life that would be remembered long after they were gone.